Welcome to Bed Crime Stories podcast. I'm your host, T, and if true crime is your jam, and like me, you enjoy delving into unsolved cases, trying to figure out who done it, please consider subscribing. Also, if you enjoy my videos, please do me a favor and hit that like button. In a live with Scott H. and Penny, who's now known as Fizzle, the Wells neighbor Jodi Sue Brown, or JSB as I'm going to refer to her, talks about the early days after Summer Wells went missing and her life with her former partner, Andy Bernard. Right before this live, JSB had just left Andy Bernard, and I believe that Scott H. and Penny had even helped her and their two kids move off Bernard's property to another then secret location. During this live, JSB was calling Bernard by the name Voldemort, and she talked about the DV he was said to have committed against her. JSB also talked about balls that she said were dropped by law enforcement in Summer's investigation, and she made some other fascinating allegations as well. I had never heard this 2-hour live before. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but I wanted to share some of what I consider the most important things that JSB said during the live. I think it's good to go back over things key people associated with Summer's case have said over the past year and see how it matches up with what we now know. I'm stating up front that some of this information is definitely already out in the atmosphere, but some of it was new to me, and some of it I'd heard before, but not directly out of JSB's mouth. So with that said, let's dig in. Number 1, per JSB, cars were not impounded by law enforcement during the initial searches, including Candy Harr's Silverado truck, which is definitely a shocking statement. I would certainly have hoped that law enforcement scoured that truck on June 15th, 2021, or the next day, since it was the vehicle that Summer was in for most of the day before she was reported missing. In fact, I would hope that all of the Wells vehicles would have been taken down to the station for a thorough going over, just like was done with Shanann Watts' Lexus SUV after she was found in that shallow grave. If the cars weren't searched early on, then that is really a big ball drop. 2, JSB said she overheard bigger fish detectives complaining about Summer's scent sample and how Hawkins County may not have bagged it properly to maximize the scent or allow the scent to be maintained, and may have even misplaced the scent sample at some point. By big fish, JSB, I think, may have been referring to the FBI, and she's saying that they were complaining about Hawkins County law enforcement not handling that scent sample correctly. Number 3, JSB told Scott H. and Penny that there were large areas of Andy Bernard's property that were never searched. She said that multiple teams of searchers kept showing up at the property and searching the same parts of the land without hitting the unsearched areas. Hearing that makes me wonder once again, how thorough were the searches on the properties of the Wells neighbors? Were they truly thoroughly searched? And if not, why not? 4, JSB said the red barrel with the words "for sale" that was seen on the Wells property in the video where Summer was dancing in the rain. JSB said that that red barrel was likely from Andy Bernard because he got them from his workplace, and she said those red barrels are used as burn barrels by a lot of people in the area. 5, JSB also said the people who lived near 110 Ben Hill Road knew right away that Summer was no longer there on the property or around it on June 15, 2021. She made it sound like the large 2-mile radius surrounding the Wells property was too far away for a barefoot 5-year-old to walk to, and I would have to agree with that. And JSB was basically saying the searchers' efforts there were wasted because they, meaning some of those who live in Beech Creek near the wells, already knew that Summer wasn't there. To me, that's a very bold statement to make, and one that I hope law enforcement has followed up on. 6. JSB also stated that her and Andy Bernard's garbage and mail were confiscated by law enforcement for 2 weeks after Summer vanished without explanation. Interesting. 7. JSB also tells Scott H. and Penny during this live that she believes Summer was taken from somewhere on the Wells property, somewhere between the swing and the back door, or perhaps somewhere near the bottom of the property. She was also saying that the way the property is shaped, Candace up in the house would not have heard a scream or a car either. 8. JSB stated that law enforcement definitely checked out every shed and barrel on the Wells property from what she could tell. She said they searched everywhere and everything on Dawn and Candace's land, even though she wasn't able to see what exactly was done inside the Wells home. So JSB made it sound like the searchers definitely scoured the Wells property early on. 9. Scott H. then talked about Beech Creek as a place that he remembered as being where the police would not go unless they absolutely had to. And Jodi Sue has said that if it's nighttime there, the cops won't get out of their cars, and people knew that if they didn't have business there, they better not go there. If you're passing through, you better keep passing through. JSB talked about people even calling the police to Beech Creek and then harassing them. Beech Creek, at least according to JSB and Scott H., is an insular place where you don't go unless you belong there. And this is in keeping with what JSB has said previously about Beech Creek in some of her other early videos about the case. 10. Jodi Sue also talked about giant Klan meetings going down at a place called Grassy Creek, as in Ku Klux Klan meetings, and she said they even hand out hot dogs during those gatherings. How charming. I looked it up, and there's a city called Grassy Creek, as well as a road called Grassy Creek Road. Sounds like it's quite far from Rogersville, Tennessee, though. 11. At this point, JSB was saying that she doesn't think that Candace is involved in Summer's disappearance. She said she saw a look on Candace's face that night that told her Candace was truly upset, tears were flowing, and the color of her face was gone. 12. Then JSB mentions her ex, Andy Bernard, screaming at their minor daughter and describing Summer's dead body in the most gruesome details that you could ever imagine. JSB said that Andy did this as a way to traumatize his daughter. JSB's daughter also spoke at this point during the live and said her father Andy was screaming that day. She said that she went down to the cabin, and that would be the cabin where Jodi Sue was staying for the few days after her radiation treatment so as not to accidentally poison anyone. And Andy screamed at his daughter about being near the cabin. And then Andy Bernard told his daughter that he knows that Summer is dead in a ditch and that he knows that Candace and Dawn did it. If what JSB and her daughter alleged is true, I hope law enforcement has checked this out and grilled Bernard about the dead body bit. That story is screaming for follow-up by law enforcement. Also, it's odd that JSB would have her minor daughter get on the live and talk about such things, especially when she said her daughter had awful nightmares after being told those things by her father. 13. JSB also said that Andy Bernard was at work on the day Summer vanished, and she said there are cameras at his workplace. Now, we've all heard this, but I'm still not sure if that's been verified. And I'm aware that Fred Hill has told Ziggy that he saw Andy Bernard in the holler during the day when Summer went missing. I'm sure law enforcement must know for sure if Andy's alibi about being at work all day on June 15th was verified or not. Let's hope so. 14. JSB also talked about Andy Bernard's mother, Polly Bernard, having gone to school with Sheriff Ronnie Lawson and being friends with him. JSB also mentions seeing detectives' cars at Polly Bernard's property and seeing them escort Andy's parents to another county in the area. Basically, JSB was saying or implying that Ronnie Lawson perhaps might cover up things if his friends asked him to. And let me just say to Sheriff Lawson, that's allegedly. Allegedly. She's alleging. I don't want no trouble with the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office. 15. JSB also mentioned Andy Bernard screaming about EquiSearch and saying basically the FU word to EquiSearch, making it sound like Andy was angry about the searches around his home and area. I'd love to know if that really happened, and if so, why Bernard was saying that. 16. JSB also talks about seeking an order of protection against Bernard, and she said the people in the courthouse were making a joke out of the whole thing. She said the man before Andy Bernard in the courtroom made one noise and he was taken to jail for talking out of turn in the courtroom. But she says that when Bernard got up and talked, the judge didn't say a thing to him. She also said that when law enforcement asked him if he had weapons, he lied and said no, he's a convicted felon, meaning he cannot legally have them. But according to JSB, Andy did have weapons. And I've got to believe that everybody living in that holler has a weapon or weapons. I mean, they say they have bears there and snakes and all sorts of other stuff and meth heads and scary people. So yeah, of course, they probably all have weapons. 17. JSB also said she asked for child support, but Andy Bernard told the court that he only had a temp job, and it sounds like the judge let Bernard get away with that excuse, and maybe JSB didn't get any child support. If anybody knows whether she did or she didn't, I'd love to know in the comments. 18. JSB also talked about Randy Haas. Remember him? He's the former Sullivan County officer, now RSO, who was fired for taking troubling photos with young boys who were under his care for a weekend trip to a Civil War reenactment. JSB said that it was Andy Bernard's parents who allowed Haas to use their internet after the authorities told Haas that he can no longer access the internet. JSB also said that Haas is related to the Bernards, so there's another one of those Beech Creek family connections. It turns out as well that the Bernards own, or at least at one time, owned most of Beech Creek, so they are an influential family of sorts, at least in the holler, and possibly when it comes to the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office. Okay, those are my top 18 items, my top takeaways from the 2-hour live, which I found was jam-packed with some of the most interesting information that JSB has shared over the past year. I believe she's tried to backtrack on some of the things she said during this live later on, and I think JSB has now fallen out with Scott H. and Penny and found much to criticize about them in her many lives on her own YouTube channel. I'll leave a link to Scott H. and Penny, now Fizzle, live in case you want to listen to the entire 2 hours and 12 minutes of it. Until the next time on Bed Crime Stories, hey, do me a favor, smash that like button, leave me a comment, subscribe if you're not yet a member, come on.